Hey folks, this is Vint with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and once again, we're going to check out Heroes of Hammerwatch 2. So, a couple of you had asked me to create some more guides. Specifically, Silverwolf2761 says, would be keen to see more New Game Plus guides, seems like it's quite a bit tougher, would be keen to see some thoughts. Boss guides too, perhaps. Well, the first part of that, the New Game Plus guides, I have something similar to that already, but I'll be happy to perhaps go through a partial run and give some tips as to what I look for, what I typically do, that kind of thing. That's going to be down the line when I've got more time to do it. As far as the boss guide is concerned, I went ahead and did that tonight, but keep in mind, each class handles bosses differently. Some have self-healing, some do not, and some prefer ranged, some prefer melee. It's depending on what class you pick, you're going to be tackling these bosses a little differently. So this is going to be a broad overview of the bosses and what they're capable of doing. Just for a frame of reference, I am pushing New Game Plus 2 with my then Rogue at level 27. He is now 28, having completed that run. I took Blessing of Protection, which gives me extra damage protection, coated weapons for poison. I also took some food that's centered around curse. Stinging curse, for example. I've got the Bishop's Bread, slow and steady. Even though I wasn't capped at 30, I wanted that extra defense. And then Toxic Twist because I was jumping so heavily into poison. And then Architect, I enabled a bunch of stuff just to make my run a little bit easier. The first boss that you'll come across is the Totem Boss. He's got 4 phases, and these phases will alternate depending on just random generation. The first phase is the Fire Totem phase. He'll be spewing out fire in a random swirl, like clockwise swirl. You got to avoid that. He'll also be laying down fire in a lane. And then the Ice Totem phase, that's where he's going to be spewing out ice across various lanes. The Earth Totem phase involves him throwing out these boulders, so you just got to avoid those as well. And then lastly, when you get to the Lightning Totem phase, he's going to go ahead and just start throwing these tornadoes out and trying to hit you with them, and he also may charge the totems on the outside. Honestly, this is one of the easier fights once you're leveled up. You just got to out DPS it. If you're ranged and squishy, you may have to hug to the outside a bit, rest up, get back in there and do your thing. But all in all, it's not a bad boss, pretty quick. Again, your strategies will change depending on what class you ultimately bring with you. Now, admittedly, that went by very quickly. My rogue will do that. It blows stuff up. So I went ahead and reran NG0 with my paladin to show you things in a slower setting. Typically a paladin doesn't have that much DPS, but on NG0, with this being an NG3 paladin, I think. I mean, I was just able to take him out quickly, but still, if you're an NG0 paladin, you're going to have a tougher time trying to take out the NG0 totem. You'll be tankier, of course, but have less power to do it. Anyway, as you can see, there's the Earth Totem phase here. Again, these phases are random, and he's kind of throwing out boulders as well as like connecting with the pillars on the outside to do various things. And then we move on to the Fire Totem phase, and as I said earlier, it sort of spews in a clockwise fashion, and then it'll reach for the pillars via this fire line. So it'll just shoot out a line of fire, hitting those totems and also spraying that fire out. And again, once you're typically done dealing with that, I typically, like in the early onset of the game, I hugged the outside. You can actually hide behind the totems to prevent the fire from hitting you, but you have to be very careful because the ads can still hit you from there. The Lightning Totem phase deals with those tornadoes like I was talking about, but it also will reach out to those pillars and then shoot these little balls of electricity all over the place. Those are quite dangerous. Coupled with the ads, I mean, if you stay in those tornadoes too long, they can really take you down. And then lastly, you've got the Ice Totem phase. As mentioned before, it's going to shoot out like waves of ice at you via down these lanes. It'll also connect with those outside totems to create these swirly icicles, I guess. So avoid those. Hiding behind pillars can be a little dangerous here. And luckily, it only shoots in like one direction typically, like in a angle, so you can try and jump to the other side. So hugging the inside will typically help with that. If you are low level, definitely it's going to take a couple of tries to get this done. Don't be discouraged, just keep trying. The next boss you'll come across is Shadowface. If you're on NG1 or above, you're going to possibly have some curse at this point. There's a couple of those Braziers, and I'm going to call them Braziers because you guys don't let it go that I mispronounced it in my last video. They are now forever known as Braziers, and you guys are just going to have to suck it up. Anyway, there's some Braziers out there that you can remove curse. If you don't have any, save it, because you will get curse at NG1 or above if you get hit by these attacks that Shadowface is throwing at you. There's a lot of shadowy attacks coming from Shadowface and from the minions. Getting hit will cause curse. The drinks, of course, and the food will sort of alleviate that, but still, it's very possible you'll get hit. And the whole strategy of this boss fight is there's going to be these cultists sort of, I don't know, worshipping on these rings. You just have to kill them. That's all. Just keep moving. Just do a sweep, kill them all. Every time they respawn, a part of Shadowface's health goes down. So it's just a matter of avoiding damage and sort of zooming in, nuking these cultists, and zooming back out. You're going to have a crap ton of followers trying to kill you in the process. If you're able to bring some kind of AoE that you can maybe leave behind you, like the poison cloud, for example, on the rogue in the poison specialization, super fun. It's great. You just drop it behind you and kill hundreds of cultists in your wake. It's really nice. But yeah, that's the boss fight. And the boss fight gets harder as he reaches different phases he just kind of, the arc at which he throws out those shadowy attack balls, whatever, that is increased. So he'll actually span almost the entire map if you're not careful. And if you get caught in a really bad position, you can hit by a couple. And again, that can cause some nasty stacks of curse to hit you. And even though I had drinks and everything else, I was still accumulating curse. Like I said, if you did not take those braziers before walking in, the door will be open again. It closes behind you during the boss fight, but after the boss fight is over, you can actually dash back to the entrance and then, get some of that curse to go away by lighting those, again, braziers. Braziers. Next, you'll have Arista, and admittedly, this was another one of those quick boss fights. Don't worry, I reran it on my Paladin so that you can see it in quote-unquote slow motion. As you can see, my rogue is just kind of hugging the inside there, being careful not to get hit by the spikes. There's 3 rings of spikes that will pop up, and I was just avoiding. I was nuking this thing before it could even spawn all of its plants and minions and all of that crap. And that's ideally what you want to do. You're going to have the easiest time in the Arista fight if you manage to blow this thing up as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, there's no, bestiary yet to sort of hint as to what its weaknesses are. My guess is flame, but as you can see, it went down very quickly with my poison build, so it's anyone's guess as to what this thing's weakness actually is. Don't forget to grab the stuff from the left and from the right. Typically, there's some XP scrolls, there's some materials, some gold, that kind of thing. Okay, so as promised, I brought my Paladin into an NG0 environment. Again, my Paladin is like NG3. I still took some damage from this thing. I believe it does poison damage, so my recommendation is to kind of stock up at the apothecary in town, and there's poison resistance underneath the potion upgrades. So if you can, get those if you're having trouble with this boss fight. In the early onset, like I said, there's going to be 3 rings of spikes sticking out of the ground, and they'll start from the outside and work their way in. Arista will also be spawning these plants that you've already seen in the dungeon that kind of shoot these lines of spikes at you, I guess, is what that is. But the problem is, the longer you let those ads go, the more of them that spawn and throw crap at you. So you're going to be out DPS'd very quickly. As you can see around the outside, there's a circle and there's a ring of poison. You want to stay out of that. And Arista will also drop down those hooks or vines or weeds, whatever they are in the ground, that will not only slow you down when they hit you, but also do some significant damage. So it's going to limit where you can run in this. So my original advice stands. If you can nuke this thing quickly, you're going to want to do that. If you can't, try and hug at medium range or close range and do your best to out heal this thing if you can, but you're going to get overwhelmed quickly because the ads just keep coming. And for a solo player, there's no way to take them all down. The next boss fight that you'll come across is in the barracks, and they're called the Harbingers of Dread. There are 2 of these guys, and I have to warn you, if you're playing NG1 and above, you can get cursed by them. So there's a melee skeleton guy, whatever. He will try and swipe at you with his scythe. He'll also throw axes at you. He can curse you by hitting you with, I believe, the axes. Possibly the scythe too. I haven't been able to confirm it because I've been too busy trying to dodge everything. But typically, he'll pick a target and he'll follow that target and try and hit them. That's what the melee one does. As far as the mage caster is concerned, he'll kind of stay off to the side, but sometimes get within your range. And then he'll cast these like fireballs that will shoot out like little shards, similar to that of a sorcerer's ball when it's upgraded. He'll also shoot a cone of fire at you. He'll also summon these like purple shadowy electric storms, and I believe that will also cause cursed. I'm not 100% sure, but anything shadowy in this game I just assume is going to cause curse. If you see a shadow bolt coming at you, dodge it, because typically it's going to do something nasty to you, cause curse or whatever. So the way to handle these guys, at least in my opinion, pick one target and just murder it as best as possible while keeping an eye on the other one. That's how I typically do it. If you're able to get some kind of AoE to hit both of them, all the better. The boss fight will go much faster because it seems like each has their own damage. And, hitting both, it'll double the amount of time, double the amount of damage that you're doing to them. The next boss fight that you'll come across is in the courts. They're called the Serpents of Demise. This is the second to last boss in the game. This is one of the boss fights I typically dread going into just because of how long it takes to kill these things. Now, I could be wrong and I could be misremembering, but in NG0, I only remember there being 3 dragon heads, 3 dragon skeleton heads, and it seems like in NG1 Plus there's 4. Again, I could just be misremembering, but typically these things will crawl under the ground and then they'll surface on occasion to do different things. Some will spew out ads, and these ads are super important for certain classes, and also for getting those combos. Some classes will get health back for killing mobs. So having these mobs, like a warlock, again, could use those mobs to heal or to generate essence, that kind of thing. So the mobs are actually useful, especially if you've got a trinket that makes them drop mana. I think it's like the mana crystallizer or something or other. Anyway, so it'll spew mobs. It'll also shoot these skeleton heads at you, and they'll just sort of lazily go through the level and try and hit you. And I believe if they hit you enough times, they disappear, or if enough time goes by, they disappear. They actually hit fairly hard, and trying to dodge them is a pain. So I gotta stress, you need some way to heal in this, or make sure you bring a lot of potions with you. If you can, stack up on regeneration trinkets and hug the outside so that there's, less of these dragon heads coming at you all at once. If you try and go in there, typically it's a challenge because sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 of them and then one appears and then curls around you and you can't get out. Then you're stuck and then you just get mobbed. That's a thing. So you have to be careful not to get stuck. It's possible for their bodies to actually trap you. So you have to really pick your moments with this boss fight. Also, around the, halfway point, the dragons will actually come out and start spewing lasers at you. You gotta avoid them. If you can hide behind a pillar, fine, but I can typically outrun it just by either going clockwise or counterclockwise around the arena. This is not a boss fight that you want to rush because at close range, the ads will just murder you if they surround you. And again, getting trapped by the skeletons and then getting spewed on by the orange fire or the laser or the mob, it's very easily It's very easy to die quickly in this boss fight. So that's why I kind of dread it. This is one of those tactical ones, I believe, that you just kind of have to pick your battles. When you see one dragon head isolated from the rest, that's when you go in, get some damage on it, and then when you start seeing those mobs or another dragon head pop up, ready to pounce at you, then get out of there. So it's one of those hit and run boss fights, and that can be frustrating to some people, especially if your class isn't a heavy hitter. If you're rocking, like, say, a divine paladin or some kind of low DPS class, this could be a boss fight that could take maybe 10-15 minutes, which is awful. But even if you're playing a high DPS class, it can still be a lengthy fight because you're squishy and you're trying to stay alive. So Serpents of Demise, don't rush the boss fight, pick your moments, and just do the best you can. So the last boss fight of the game can be easy and it can be impossible. It all depends on what trinkets and other things that you have. I have to stress, class titles, super important. I have to stress, throwing skill points into trinket upgrades to attune them so that, you get double the amount out of a trinket whenever you do pick it up from a run. Also, hand-me-down gear, really important. If you have another class that's doing very well and you're having another class that's struggling, consider getting the higher gear from the other class and then bringing that down to the lower leveled ones so that they have an easier time of it. Now, in this particular boss fight, before we even go into the room, there's a whole slew of these eyeball things. You'll encounter them throughout the level. They're annoying. Certain classes can deal with them quickly, others cannot. My rogue with the poison cloud did just fine. So, the Avatar. Like I said, this is going to be either an impossible fight or just one that, is easy to moderate. In the first phase, he will sort of pause for a moment and sort of follow a target, and then he'll do a giant swipe at them. Your goal is just before he swipes to get on the other side of him, because if he does hit you with that giant swipe, he'll silence you and prevent you from attacking for a while. It's a nasty debuff. So that's one of the things he'll do. He'll also fly. He'll just fly off and then reappear. He doesn't do anything else, just flies off and reappears. On occasion, he'll slam his fist down and do some kind of frost damage around him. You can dash out of that and then just dash right back in again. The first phase isn't too bad. You can use this time maybe as a warlock to get your essence built up. It's not tough. Again, depending on your DPS, it may take you a while still to get through this, but this is the easiest part of the boss fight. So if you're having trouble with this, you're in for it on the second and third phase. So once you get the Avatar down to the second phase, or 2/3 health, he'll disappear and then these shadowy figures will just come at you. Again, depending on your class, you're going to deal with them differently. There's also going to be a mouth toward the top that's going to be spewing out stuff like Shadowface did, these shadow bolts. They can cause curse. And by the way, these shadow forms can cause curse. So even if you were good enough to avoid curse up to this point, it's very possible you'll have, say, 3, 4, 5 curse going into the second and third half of this boss fight. Take these guys out as quickly as possible, because if you take your time taking them out, that mouth will keep spewing that shadow bolt stuff at you, and that more curse is bad. So in the second phase, when the Avatar goes to dash away, he'll actually fly in 3 different directions. He'll come back, fly, come back, fly. He'll leave a trail of fire behind him. That fire is nasty. It can do a lot of damage, so your goal is to avoid it at all costs and also not step in it. But he'll do his normal attacks. He'll kind of growl, pick a target, pause, and then swipe. And again, your goal is just to stay on the reverse side of him, quickly move to the other side and then hit him from behind. That's the ultimate goal. And again, on occasion, he'll kind of fly off. He'll leave streaks of fire behind him. At some point, he's going to get into the third phase, and you'll know it when he slams the ground and these balls of fire sort of swirl around him and extend outward. that will cause fire. So one strategy is, as soon as his fist hits the ground, you can dash away, but then dash right back in again to get close range. But keep in mind, he's going to have fire all around him. If you are unlucky and he swipes at you and pushes you into that fire, not only are you going to be silenced, but you're also going to take a huge amount of fire damage. So everything else about this fight is the same. It's just that fire can be extremely deadly if you get pushed into it or you're having trouble dodging it in the first place. But all in all, it's a very difficult fight. You need to be well geared and have a lot of guild titles. And yeah, it's tough. So at first you don't succeed, try again. And there you have it, another quick look at Heroes of Hammerwatch 2. Hopefully you found this video helpful and enjoyable. If you guys haven't already, subscribe to me on Twitch and YouTube. That way you can stay up to date with any new content I happen to publish. This is Vince, thanks for watching. I'll catch y'all next time. Take care.